This is Part 2, Episode 97. As an iron-blooded commander, the White Tiger Duke's desire for control had always been strong. Against the unknown, he naturally chose to control the other party. As for whether Hu Yuhao's words were true or false, he had to capture him first before interrogating him. The rest of the White Tiger bodyguards didn't move. Only the 4 bodyguards leaped towards Hu Yuhao at the same time. Hu Yuhao sighed in his heart. It's really not easy convincing him. It was his first time interacting with the White Tiger Duke. At this moment, he had mixed feelings. He had only managed to keep his calm and say everything he had said earlier through willpower. The 4 special guards unleashed their martial souls. 3 of them were soul emperors, and the last one was a soul sage. They were quite strong. The soul sage was the first to charge towards Hu Yuhao. He had 3 yellow, 3 purple, and 1 black soul ring. It was a decent combination of soul rings. However, an indescribable, terrifying aura surged towards him when he was 10 meters away from Hu Yuhao. At that instant, the soul sage felt as if he was facing the king of soul beasts. The all-engulfing suppression left him very stifled, and his forward momentum stalled. He was horrified to discover that the soul rings of the mysterious White Tiger bodyguard on the other side were rising. 2 yellow, 2 purple, 4 black and 1 red soul ring. There were 9 soul rings. There were actually 9 soul rings. The most terrifying thing was that the last soul ring out of these 9 was a blood-red, 100,000-year soul ring. 100,000-year soul ring only existed in legends, even in the world of soul masters. Those who had gone through orthodox soul master education would know that 100,000-year soul beast possessed high intelligence. It could even choose to be reborn as a human. It was extremely difficult to hunt and kill a 100,000-year soul beast. Not only must one possess great abilities, but he must also be lucky. If a title Doluor faced a 100,000-year soul beast, the title Doluor was slightly more likely to win if their cultivations were similar. However, this was under the premise that the soul beast didn't hail from one of the stronger species. While it might be possible for a title Doluor to defeat a 100,000-year soul beast, killing and capturing it was much more difficult. A soul beast that could survive for 100,000 years, or achieve a cultivation of 100,000 years, possessed great survival abilities. Moreover, 100,000-year soul beasts were getting rarer and rarer as time went on. They were very aware that soul masters hunted them. As a result, most of the 100,000-year soul beasts hid in special habitats. Those habitats were like their worlds. A soul master who tried to venture into these habitats was likely to die. However, this person that had hidden himself among the White Tiger bodyguards actually possessed a 100,000-year soul ring. The terrifying aura earlier was also unleashed through the 100,000-year soul ring. It was too scary, a complete suppression in terms of rank and cultivation. The other 3 special guards naturally stopped in the air. The dragon-scale horses that the surrounding bodyguards were on all screamed tragically before they collapsed to the ground. They were all soul beasts that had only been alive for a few decades, and couldn't resist the aura of a 100,000-year soul beast. They could even be frightened to death by a 100,000-year soul beast. Only the White Tiger colt underneath the White Tiger Duke remained standing. However, on a closer look, Hu Yuhao could see that the White Tiger Duke was releasing dim white soul power over his White Tiger colt. Against Hu Yuhao's aura, this soul beast that had close to a 10,000-year cultivation was still greatly suppressed. The White Tiger Duke's expression turned serious. He hadn't expected a title Doluor with a 100,000-year soul ring to be hiding among his bodyguards. At this point, he was also stunned to realize that he couldn't even tell the age of the other party. This was the first time something like this had happened to him. "Who are you?" Dai Hao asked. He was much more aware of what a 100,000-year soul ring meant compared to his special guards. A 100,000-year soul ring was a stepping stone to becoming a transcendent Doluor. Generally speaking, it was very difficult for a title Doluor to advance in rank after they reached rank 90. Most title Doluor would fail to become a rank 95 transcendent Doluor. Only those who were extremely gifted, intelligent, and fortunate enough had such an opportunity. However, there were some titled Doluo who were exceptions. As long as they continued cultivating and persisted until they made breakthroughs, they could become transcendent Doluo. These titled Doluo possessed a 100,000-year soul ring. No form of medicine or strength could compare to a 100,000-year soul ring in terms of enhancing a soul master's body. It made a soul master capable of handling the soul power of a transcendent Doluo, and adjusted his gifts until he reached such a level. It was precisely because he knew all this that Dai Hao didn't think the person in front of him was only a titled Doluo. He clearly knew that someone who possessed a 100,000-year soul ring could possibly be a transcendent Doluo. A 100,000-year soul ring was a top-ranked treasure that all soul masters coveted. However, it also represented huge trouble. A 100,000-year soul ring couldn't be stripped off a soul master, but a 100,000-year soul beast would still produce 100,000-year soul bones. As long as a soul master was dead, his soul bones could still be snatched away. As a result, other titled Doluo might be tempted to kill someone with a 100,000-year soul ring in a bid to snatch their soul bones. That was why soul masters with a 100,000-year soul ring would try to increase their abilities to the level of a transcendent Doluo if they didn't have sufficient protection around themselves. In this way, they could protect themselves from being pursued and killed. I can't challenge a transcendent Doluo on my own, Dai Hao quickly realized. Hui Yuhao felt a little helpless right now. He had had no choice but to use his imitation to make himself seem this impressive. Otherwise, how could he stop the White Tiger Duke from attacking him and make him listen? One's abilities always had the biggest say in the world of soul masters. You don't have to care who I am. You should be able to sense that I don't have any ill intentions towards you. Otherwise, I could have attacked you whenever I wanted. I didn't have to wait until now, or give you any warning. I specialize in spiritual power, thus I can sense that a huge crisis is waiting for you somewhere not too far away. If you believe me and quickly turn back, you can still make it. Otherwise, you won't be able to handle whatever's trying to deal with you. Turn around immediately. Hui Yuhao used the simplest way to tell him what his intention was. Dai Huabin was among the bodyguards right now. When he saw Hui Yuhao on his dragon-scale horse, revealing the aura of a transcendent Doluo, he was in awe. He thought to himself, this fellow is still the same as ever. His ability to scare others is greater than whatever other abilities he possesses. Didn't he do the same to us in the past? However, he is making it seem so real that my father doesn't even realize it. Yes, Hui Yuhao was using his immense, concrete immaterial spiritual power under the guise of his imitation to pose as a transcendent Doluo. It wasn't just that Dai Hao didn't discover anything, even Elder Xian wouldn't be able to tell anything unless he was close enough to him. For the White Tiger Duke, he wouldn't be able to tell unless he really fought Hui Yuhao. Dai Hao squinted and said, how do I know this is not another trap? Why should I believe you? Hui Yuhao didn't make a sound, but he suddenly lifted his head to look into the sky. His senses were very acute. They weren't inferior to Wang Qiu's golden dragon's perception. His judgment on danger had always been very accurate. When he lifted his head, golden light shot out of his eyes. His spiritual power was already focused in one direction. On a flat ground, Hui Yuhao's unidirectional detection could reach out close to 5,000 meters. He could cover an even longer distance in the air, as there weren't any obstacles. When he revealed his spiritual power, the White Tiger Duke didn't doubt his abilities anymore. His terrifying spiritual power was even greater than the White Tiger Duke's spiritual power. Hui Yuhao's spiritual power was even on the verge of turning material as he unleashed it. What is his cultivation? Transcendent Doluo. This person must be a transcendent Doluo. However, I've never heard of any transcendent Doluo with a spiritual type martial soul on the continent. Has this guy been hiding all this while? Hui Yuhao wasn't as relaxed as Dai Hao. When he unleashed his spiritual power into the air, his expression immediately changed, and he shouted, quickly, give the order to retreat. There are surveillance-type soul tools deployed in the air by your enemies. They are observing your every move. If you suddenly stop, they'll be alerted and they'll come for you. Quickly, retreat. When Hui Yuhao was in Shrek Academy, he had learned from his teachers that the defenses of all military bases had become very tight now due to the rapid development of soul tools. Furthermore, there were title Doluo following the White Tiger Duke, given how important he was to the Star Luo Empire. It was just that these title Doluo usually remained hidden. This time, he hadn't even brought any of them with him. As long as he could return to his military base, his safety would be assured. Dai Hao wasn't an indecisive person. He was able to become the commander of 3 armies, because he always performed his tasks quickly and effectively. After sensing Hui Yuhao's immense spiritual power, he made his decision and ordered, "Let's turn back to our base." After Hui Yuhao heard his words, he heaved a sigh of relief, and quickly retracted the suppression that he had unleashed upon them. However, he was in slightly low spirits, because the dragon scale horses weren't able to get up anytime soon. In the face of the Ice Empress 100,000-year aura, they needed at least 2 hours before they could get up. However, he couldn't be bothered by this now. He had had no choice earlier. If he hadn't asserted his authority, the White Tiger Duke wouldn't have believed him. The White Tiger bodyguards were indeed elites. They didn't need to be ordered before they started to retreat on foot. They turned towards the direction of their base and started to run. They still maintained a strict formation. As they ran, they deliberately kept to 2 sides, leaving a pathway in the middle. Without the suppression from Hui Yuhao, the White Tiger cult became normal again. The White Tiger Duke quickly rode it back along the path that they had rode out on earlier. Dai Hao was right not to use any flying-type soul tools. They would make him an obvious target in the air. Even if he were 10,000 meters away, the surveillance-type soul tools would be able to easily lock onto him. It was much easier for him to retreat on the ground. Anyway, his enemies wouldn't dare to remain in the air. The anti-air defense system in the Mingdo mountain range wasn't to be trifled with. It covered the entire aerial region within 3,000 meters of the ground. The surveillance-type soul tools that Hui Yuhao had discovered earlier were close to 5,000 meters in the air, and so weren't discovered by the aerial surveillance soul tools. The dragon scale horse that Hui Yuhao was on couldn't take it anymore either. He jumped off the back of the horse along with Wang Donga. In a second, Dai Hao had already ridden the White Tiger colt over in front of him. "Elder, thanks for the warning. If we manage to avert this disaster, I'll be eternally grateful to you." As Hui Yuhao looked at the White Tiger Duke's resolute expression that didn't seem to reveal any sense of panic, Hui Yuhao felt his breathing quicken. At this point, there wasn't any hatred in his heart. It was just a genuine wish to help the White Tiger Duke escape. "Let's move quickly. Otherwise, it'll be too late." "Oh yes, is there any way of preventing your defensive-type soul tools from launching attacks against aerial objects? Or at least preventing them from attacking the aerial-type soul tools that we have?" Dai Hao stopped the White Tiger colt and answered, "There is one way. As long as we mark the soul tools with a special symbol that belongs to our military, it is possible. I'm the only who can mark these soul tools. There's a special way of distinguishing these markings." Hui Yuhao nodded and asked, "That's great. How far are you from 9 rings?" Dai Hao was stunned, and replied, "I obtained 9 rings half a year ago." Title Doluo. He's actually a title Doluo. Hui Yuhao was stunned at this moment. However, his heart turned cold following this. He didn't know Dai Hao was a title Doluo, but the enemies who were planning to ambush him definitely knew. An ambush on a soul Doluo and an ambush on a title Doluo would naturally be different. This meant that their enemies were bound to be even stronger. Hui Yuhao couldn't be bothered with anything else. He quickly retrieved something from his storage-type soul tool and gave it to Dai Hao. He said, "Quick, use it to cover you later. We'll also help cover you. Quick, leave." After Dai Hao received the box that Hui Yuhao passed to him, he didn't hesitate, and turned his colt around before it galloped away. He opened the box as his colt galloped. Hui Yuhao and Wang Donga were at the back now. However, Dai Huabin's voice came from the side, "Let's cover him together." As he looked at Dai Huabin, Hui Yuhao was immediately furious. "Cover my ass. Quickly, go." If even he can't deal with the enemy, what use do you think you are? As Hui Yuhao spoke, he pointed at the white tiger duke, who was getting further and further away. Dai Huabin straightened his neck and said, "If you can stay behind to cover for them, why can't I do the same?" Hui Yuhao wanted to slap him, which would help him get his revenge, too. However, Dai Huabin couldn't die, as he was extremely important to both him and Wang Donga in their bid to pass the deep adventure round. "Stop with the crap and let's go." As he spoke, Hui Yuhao had already activated his soul thrusters to advance in the direction of the white tiger duke. Wang Donga didn't unleash her martial soul and just followed. Her martial soul was too obvious in the dark, she wouldn't unleash it unless it was unnecessary. Dai Huabin and Zhu Lu chased the both of them. He was much more relieved. They had only left the base a little while ago. With his father's speed, he would only take 10 minutes to return. However, the sky lit up at this moment. Walls of greenish light started to fly towards them from the west. These greenish lights were shaped like gourds. As they were too far from the ground, their actual size couldn't be determined. However, the sparks that they created in the sky were extremely blinding. The lights flew towards the white tiger duke. "They are indeed here," Hui Yuhao sighed to himself. The enemy had surveillance-type soul tools in the sky, which was equivalent to having an extra eye in the sky. Only the Sun-Moon Empire was capable of sending surveillance-type soul tools 5,000 meters into the air. At least, no other empire in the continent could do so yet. Most anti-air defense systems couldn't accurately attack a target that was more than 3,000 meters away. There was nothing Hui Yuhao could do about this, either. He was only a soul engineer between class 6 and 7, and a 5-ringed soul king. Unless he could rise 5,000 meters into the air to deal with the surveillance-type soul tools, he had no way to change the situation. Even though he knew they were being watched, he couldn't destroy the surveillance-type soul tools. This was the result of his lack of power. Hui Yuhao knew that he was doing pretty well so far. He had managed to stop the white tiger duke from advancing in a very short period of time. However, it was obvious that the enemy was well prepared. After discovering that something was amiss, they had quickly launched a long-range attack. Right now, they could only see how effective the Star Luo Empire's defenses were. The sky above the military bases of any empire was always a restricted zone. Hui Yuhao and Wang Qiu'er once got into trouble when they were in the Heavenly Soul Empire. In the Mingdo mountain range, the aerial restricted zones were even more strictly enforced. When these greenish, gourd-shaped lights appeared, balls of red lights started to surge out from the mountain range towards them. They were aerial interception soul cannons. It wasn't very difficult to create such soul cannons. The key was that they were huge and exhausted a lot of rare metals. When in use, they also drained a lot of soul power. Seeing that the reaction of the Star Luo Empire's anti-air defense system was pretty quick, Hui Yuhao also heaved a sigh of relief. Very soon, the balls of red light clashed with the greenish, gourd-shaped lights. Just as both parties were about to clash, the greenish lights cracked. The front and back of the gourd-shaped lights separated. The front parts charged forward at a faster speed, colliding with the red lights, while the back parts stopped in mid-air. This transformation was extremely quick. Without Hui Yuhao's spirit eyes and purple demon eyes, he wouldn't have been able to see everything clearly. Deafening explosions reverberated through the air, and huge glows illuminated the entire sky. Was the interception successful? Just as the white tiger bodyguards thought of this, their hopes were extinguished. The balls of greenish light turned cone-shaped before they once more charged down like bolts of lightning. They were targeting the path the white tiger duke would take. Not good, Hui Yuhao cursed in his heart. He couldn't be bothered with anything else now. He activated his spiritual detection to its extreme and directed it straight at the white tiger duke's head. At this point, the white tiger duke was very focused on the changes in the air. As he was unwary, Hui Yuhao's spiritual power invaded his mind. Before he could resist with his own spiritual power, he was shocked by what Hui Yuhao's spiritual detection offered him. Data about the greenish lights was presented in his mind, how long they would take to land, where they would land, etc. It all appeared in his mind. The White Tiger Duke was very experienced, and immediately knew what was going on. He expanded in size, and his short hair turned black and white, like a white tiger's stripes. 2 yellow, 2 purple and 5 black soul rings suddenly rose from him, turning into blinding light. His 4th soul ring shone extremely brightly, and balls of bright lights in the form of tiger heads quickly took form above his head. These balls of light generated dazzling, white sparks as they shot into the air. Boom, 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 boom. A series of tremendous booms echoed throughout the entire mountain range. The White Tiger Duke had unleashed his White Tiger meteor shower in the opposite direction. Furthermore, he managed to intercept the red lights accurately. The descending greenish lights had fallen extremely rapidly. Without Hu Yuhao's spiritual detection, the White Tiger Duke couldn't have accomplished such an impressive deed. Just as everyone thought that the crisis had been temporarily averted and the White Tiger Duke could continue to return to base, a brownish-yellow light suddenly rose about 300 meters in front of the White Tiger Duke. This earthy light was only 10 meters in diameter when it first appeared. However, it instantly spread out to more than 100 meters in diameter. The entire mountain range was illuminated by this light. This was... Hu Yuhao's pupils shrank. This was not a soul skill, since it was able to hide from his spiritual detection, and appear directly along the mountain pass. It had to be a soul tool. It was also the strongest soul tool he had ever seen in a fight. As such, it had to be at least a Class 8 soul tool. These people who are here to kill the White Tiger Duke are going all out. This should be a Class 8 stationary soul cannon. Be careful. Hu Yuhao shouted almost subconsciously. He also felt very weird when he shouted these 2 words. Why am I concerned about his safety? Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, the entire Mingdo mountain range seemed to shake. A huge, deafening explosion shook the region covered by the earthen light. Debris scattered all around, and the intense shockwaves instantly engulfed more than 1,000 square meters. Defend! The White Tiger Duke shouted. He didn't retreat. His 1st, 3rd, and 5th soul rings flashed. His figure instantly doubled in size. As he smacked his tiger palms together, a layer of intense white light started to spread out, with his body at the center. The shockwaves that were coming towards him were blocked. When he saw this scene, Hu Yuhao, who subconsciously moved to shield Wang Donga, was a little dazed. Given the White Tiger Duke's abilities, he would not be dealt much harm if he only protected himself. However, the barrier he erected covered an extremely wide area. He was bound to be drained at a much faster rate. Explosions rang continuously. The ground started to fissure, starting from the center point of the explosion. These fissures quickly extended in all directions. One side of the path that they were on was a cliff, while the other side was a tall mountain. Although the mountain pass was considered quite wide, there were many rocks falling from the sky after the explosion occurred. Landslide. The White Tiger bodyguards were deservedly called the elites of the elites. Even though their individual strengths were insignificant in the face of such a terrifying explosion, they tried to gather together at this point. A portion of them with shields lifted them up to block the falling rocks and incoming shockwaves. The 4 special guards rushed forward without any hesitation, and helped the White Tiger Duke with some of the pressure he was facing. However, the incoming shockwaves were still too strong, so strong that they were driven back as they were struck. Hu Yuhao already roughly knew what the soul tool was. It was a Class 8 stationary soul cannon shell called a landslide shell. When soul tools were at least Class 7, those with special effects would be given their own names. This was especially true for stationary soul cannon shells. There were all types of names for them. This landslide shell was one of them. It was supposed to be a Class 7 stationary soul cannon shell. However, it was classified as a Class 8 shell after special formation arrays and materials were used to strengthen its cloaking and obstructive capabilities. It had very strong penetrating abilities. It would immediately drill into the ground once it landed, tapping into its rare metal formation that had a great affinity for earthen elements. It could drill into soil or granite in the shortest possible time, before unleashing an immense shockwave. The shock that it unleashed was equivalent to 100 cannon shells, simulating the strength of an explosion and enabling it to cause a landslide. This landslide shell wasn't considered very lethal among the Class 8 stationary Soul cannon shells. However, it was more stable, which allowed it to be hidden effectively. Its effect on a battlefield could be quite great, especially in strategic attacks like this. The enemy's goal was very simple: block off the White Tiger Duke's return route and buy time for them to assassinate him. "General, quickly leave. Don't care about us," the special guard, who was a soul sage, shouted anxiously. Right now, the strongest shockwave had already passed. However, the White Tiger Duke didn't leave. With his cultivation, flying at a low altitude was nothing. However, he turned back and kept on unleashing his White Tiger meteor shower in the air. He crushed the falling rocks that were going to hit his men. As Hui Yuhao looked at him drifting in mid-air, he felt as if something were choking him in his chest. He is actually risking being assassinated in order to protect his subordinates. Dai Hao shouted, "Cut the crap. Soldiers, get ready to fight the enemy. All of you are my warriors and my fellow soldiers. I won't leave any one of you behind. We'll remain here and wait for reinforcements." As he spoke, he lifted his hand and a beam of bright light shot into the sky. They weren't very far from the base. They wouldn't need to wait too long for reinforcements to arrive. After the aerial attacks and the explosion that had just occurred, their camp should have been put on alert, and reinforcements should be on the way. A huge hole a few hundred meters wide had been blown apart in front of them. It was impossible for them to traverse it on foot. If the White Tiger Duke left on his own, he would be forsaking his White Tiger bodyguards, who consisted of more than 100 men. In a war, such a situation was very common. However, the White Tiger Duke didn't make that decision. He was their general, and the soul of the Star Luo Empire's military. He was a true hero. There was no way he could forsake his soldiers and brothers. In addition, it might not be a wrong choice to defend here. After all, it was very difficult to tell where the enemy would come from. When Dai Huabin saw that his father was unwilling to leave, he started to turn anxious. He hurriedly asked Hui Yuhao, "What do we do?" Hui Yuhao clenched his fist tightly. "What else can we do? Let's help him." He couldn't decide for the White Tiger Duke. The only thing they could do now was help him guard this place. In addition, they weren't too far from their base. They still had a chance. Hui Yuhao activated his spiritual detection and covered the area where the White Tiger bodyguards were. Hui Yuhao couldn't share his spiritual power with everyone, but he shared it with the White Tiger Duke and the 4 special guards from earlier. With Hui Yuhao's help, the White Tiger Duke was able to more efficiently intercept the falling rocks with his White Tiger meteor shower. All the large rocks were destroyed by his meteor shower. Wang Donga had also opened up her radiant butterfly goddess wings at this moment. With Hui Yuhao's spiritual detection, she unleashed her light of the butterfly goddess to help the White Tiger Duke. She further lowered the threat of the landslide. The bodyguards weren't idle, either. Although not all of them had shields, they still used their weapons to sweep the falling rocks away from them. While there were still some casualties, there weren't too many. At this point, streaks of red light suddenly flashed from afar. They appeared in a very elaborate pattern, and started to move towards the White Tiger Duke and his guards. They were explosive bombs. Hui Yuhao focused his gaze, then sighed in his heart. He could guess the origin of his enemies. First, there was a Class 8 stationary soul cannon shell, then there were explosive cluster bombs. It had to be the Sun Moon Empire. The White Tiger Duke took a deep breath before he turned in the air. He flew towards the bombs as his 4th soul ring continued to shine. His White Tiger meteor shower changed directions, just like a rapid-fire cannon, flying straight towards the explosive bombs. At the same time, he also shouted, "White Tiger bodyguards, listen to my orders. Disperse and retreat." It was very difficult for them to disperse in such an area. The path in front had been blown apart, making it extremely uneven. On one side, there was a cliff. On the other side, there was a mountain. They could only search for a route through the area that had been blown apart. Fortunately, there was a gentle slope that they could use to leave this place. These soldiers would never defy the White Tiger Duke's orders. After hearing his order, the captain leading the troops immediately led them towards the pathway that had been blown apart. However, the landslide shell was there to stop them from escaping. When they came to the edge of the cliff, they only saw a deep depression. The team leader of the first team was a burly man around 40 years old. As he saw the disconnected path in front of him, he seemed desolated. He quickly turned around and faced the rest of the bodyguards that had followed him, revealing a determined look on his face. His gaze swept over all the soldiers in front of him. "Brothers, we've all witnessed it with our eyes. The Duke remained because of us. If not for us, he would already be safe. We are at an impasse right now. Every second that we burden the Duke puts him in one more second of danger. Ever since we joined the White Tiger bodyguards, we knew that we were willing to sacrifice our lives for the Duke. I won't force any of you to do so now. Those who are willing to follow me, you'll always be my good brothers. Sir, I'm willing to sacrifice my life for you. Please take care." As he spoke, he took a deep look at all the comrades in front of him. After this, he turned around, suddenly pointed his left toes to the ground before he leapt off the cliff. As a section leader, Zhong Biao had managed to judge the situation they were facing accurately. Because of them, their enemies were inching closer and closer. No one knew when reinforcements would arrive. The only way to ensure the White Tiger Duke's safety was to allow him to retreat quickly, and the reinforcements to gather. However, the White Tiger Duke was unwilling to forsake them, which made them his burden. There wasn't any way they could disperse here. The only thing they could do was sacrifice their lives to save the White Tiger Duke. When he saw this scene, Hu Yuhao felt as if his chest had been hammered. The White Tiger Duke's subordinates were willing to sacrifice their lives for him, and he was willing to risk his life to protect them, too. Suddenly, he seemed to become mightier in Hu Yuhao's mind. As he pulled at Wang Donga, the two of them leapt off the cliff. Part 2 end here.